Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we move on to the next chapter of our curriculum, which is small families, mujarrad. So we will discuss this in more detail compared to last time. So this is labeled as family 1, and it includes all the small families are included within that label of family 1. And there are 6 sub-families within family 1. And differentiating one sub-family to another or from another, we need to observe the harakat on the past tense and the present tense forms. The masdar in these families do not follow a particular pattern, so they can vary. This must be looked up in an Arabic dictionary in order to learn what the masdar is for each word. And this is how to use an Arabic dictionary is discussed in the dictionary chapter. So inshallah something we'll go through after. So we start from subfamily 1. So this is the fa'ala yaf'ulu family. And so we will use the 3 root letters, the fa, the ain and the lam, as an example so that you can memorize the template. And then in some cases we will give another example of 3 root letters that can replace the fa, the ain and the lam and the actual words in Arabic. So fa'ala yaf'ulu is not actually an Arabic word, but it's just for the sake of memorizing the template that we use this. So if we look at the past tense, we always start from the right. The past tense fi'l, it will be fa'ala. The present tense fi'l will be yaf'ulu. So you can see how the fatha on the second root letter and the fatha on the third root letter have become dhamma, and the first root letter, the fa, takes a sukoon, so it becomes fa'ala yaf'ulu. And again, the masdar we've written not applicable because each small family masdar is unique, so you have to look it up. But because fa'ala yaf'ulu is not an Arabic word, we're just using it to memorize a template, therefore it doesn't have a masdar. So and the ism fa'il is fa'ilun, so the fa gets an alif on it, so it's stretched fa'ilun. And then if we move down to the passive past tense fi'l, it's fu'ila, and this is something that you should remember from when we talked about passives, that the first letter, when we talk about past tense, the first letter you give that a dhamma, the last letter is unaffected, and everything in between takes a kasra, so that's why it becomes fu'ila. And the passive present tense fi'l is yuf'alu. And if you remember how to construct the passive present, how to turn the active present to the passive present, the first letter takes a dhamma, the last letter is unchanged, and everything in between takes a fatha, except for the sukoon, that remains a sukoon in every case, whenever we're trying to convert some active into a passive, whether it's past or present. So the yaf'ulu becomes yuf'alu in the passive present. And then if we move to the isme maf'ul, this is the thing that's acted on, it's maf'ulun, it becomes maf'ulun. And the commanding form, this is something that we have discussed, how to construct it. So we always construct it from the present tense, which is yaf'ulu, and it becomes uf'ul. So if you remember how to construct it, we take the anta version. So this uf'ul is the anta version, meaning you masculine, uf'ul. So you take that which is taf'ulu, then you drop the ta, and then you see if the new first letter has a sukoon on it or not. If it has a sukoon on it, then we need to add an alif, which it does. The fa has a sukoon, so you need to add an alif. So it becomes uf'ulu. Then you put it in the lightest version. Then the lightest version would be that you take the dhamma at the end on the lam and you turn it into a sukoon. And when we determine whether the alif that we've added has a kasra or does it have a dhamma, it only takes a dhamma if we look at the huwa version of yaf'ulu. If the second to last letter has a dhamma, then we put a dhamma on the alif, so it becomes uful. If it had anything else, so if it had a fatha or a kasra, then we put a kasra on the alif, so it becomes if, either if al or if il. And the only exception is family 4, which we'll discuss after. So this is all of this stuff we have discussed before. And the forbidding form is something we've discussed before as well. It's la taf'ul. So all you have to do is take and again, la taf'ul is the anta version, meaning you masculine. So which would be taf'ulu, because yaf'ulu is the huwa version. So the anta version will be taf'ulu. And then all we have to do is put it into the lightest form. So we change the dhamma at the end to a sukoon, so it becomes taf'ul. Then we put the la in front of it, it becomes la taf'ul. So that's the forbidding form, la taf'ul. And the zarf is the place or time of the action. And if you remember from the last chapter, it takes the form of there's 3 versions. So it will be maf'alun, maf'ilun, or maf'alatun. And the ismi alatun is the tool for doing the action. And the 3 forms it takes, if you remember, is mif'alun, mif'alun, and mif'alatun. So in order to memorize this family, you have to memorize how each letter changes, how the harakat changes, if any extra letters are added, and memorize the whole chart. Because once you memorize the changes, then you memorize the template. Once you memorize the template, then you can put any 3 root letters into this template and you know what it is. So meaning, instead of the fa, ain and lam, you can put any other 3 root letters and this template will apply. And especially in the case of the mustard, you can actually look it up because that will be a real word. So just the characteristics here, which we did discuss as I went through it. So the past tense form has 3 or has fathas on it. That's always characteristic of subfamily 1. It'll always be fa'ala, so meaning every one of them will have a fatha. And the present tense form will always have 2 dhammas on the second root letter and the third root letter, yaf'ulu. So the past tense will always have fatha across all 3 root letters, fa'ala. So if it was, for example, nasara, it'll be nasara. And yaf'ulu will always have the 2 dhammas on the second and third root letter. The ism fa'il has a fatha kasra sequence, meaning it'll always have the fatha comes first, then a kasra. So it'll always be a. So the sound it makes is a-e. So fa'ilun, a-e. It will always make a and e sound. And because it's an ism, it'll always be heavy. That's why it's fa'ilun. And a note that we've added here, which you'll realize when we get to the big families, that it does not have a meme with a dhamma. Unlike the big families, that when we look at the big families, the ism fa'il, you add a meme with a dhamma on it. But in the small families, you don't. The ism maf'ul, the meme at the start, takes a fatha, unlike the big families, which take a dhamma. So meaning, if we look at the ism maf'ul, you can see a meme has been added to the start. In the small families, the meme will take a fatha. But in the big family, something inshallah we'll get to after, the meme takes a dhamma. So this meme will always have, on the ism maf'ul of the small families, it will always have a fatha. So it's always going to be maf or ma. It will make the r sound, ma sound, always. Big families there. And the second root letter has a dhamma on it with a wa sukoon attached to it. So this is black highlighted. So meaning the second root letter, which in the ism maf'ul we're looking at. So if you look at the black highlight, the ain, which is the second root letter, will always take a dhamma, and it will always be attached to a wa with a sukoon, so it makes a u sound. So u. So, and that's always the case for the ism maf'ul in the small families. The ism alatun, the meme with the kasra at the start, so it always takes a kasra. So if you notice the purple highlight, the meme will always have a kasra, so it's mif, and mif in each case. With the present passive form, the harakat, it's a quick tip. With the passive present form, the harakat will always be the ones that normally or sound or appear above the letter. So you'll always see fatha, sukoon or dhamma, but you won't see a kasra in the passive present form. And this is in the majority of cases for passive present. So it's yuf'alu. So meaning you don't see a kasra anywhere. It'll always, all the harakat will always have either fatha, a sukoon or dhamma. So those harakat that you find at the top of the letters, you won't see a kasra in the passive present fi'l. So whenever you see a word, a fi'l, that has all the harakat is at the top, there's a good chance that that's a passive present tense. A good chance. So, like I said earlier, we use fa'ain and lam, the fa'ala, in order for memorization purposes. But here we put an example in as well of we've replaced the fa, the ain and lam with 3 other letters. So the template, just to show you that the template still applies. And this is an actual word in Arabic. So it means to create. So if we put the kha, the lam and the qaf into this subfamily number 1, which is the fa'ala yaf'ulu family, then same template applies, and we'll go through it just to make it clear. So the past tense is khalaqa, just like the last time it was fa'ala. So all we've done is just replace the letters, and this means he created because it's a past tense. The present tense is yakhluqu, and if you remember last time it was yaf'ulu. So the dhammas on the second and the third rule are just like the yaf'ulu. Everything is same. The template is still copying what we did before, and he is created. This means he is creating. And the masdar is something that, like I said, you have to look up in the dictionary, and in this case is khalqan, which means creation. And the masdar often ends with ion or ing because it's an idea, so creation. The ism fa'il, which is the dua, is khaliqun, and if you remember it was fa'ilun. So it's again same template, and this means the one who is creating. And if you look at the passive past tense, is hulika, and before it was fu'ila. This means he was created, because in passive, if you remember, the dua is hidden. So it means he was created, but we don't know who created him, or it was created as well. It can mean the passive present tense is yuklaku. So if you notice, all the harakat is at the top. So it kind of gives it away that this is a passive present tense. Yuklaku, and the other one was yuf'alu. So this is he is being created, and the masdar again is halkan, same as before. And the ism maf'ul, which is the thing that's acted on, is makhluqun, and before it was maf'ulun. And this is the one who is being created. And the command form, remember the command of forbidding in these tables will always be the anta, you masculine version. So it's ukhluq, remember it was uf'ul last time. And forbidding form is la takhluq, which the ukhluq means you male create, and the la takhluq means you male don't create, and last time it was la taf'ul. And the zarf, which is a place of time of action, so in this case the time and place of creating, is makhlaqun, makhliqun and makhlaqatun, and last time it was maf'alun, maf'ilun and maf'alatun. So it's the same template, same pattern. We've just exchanged the letters. The fa, the ain and the lam has been replaced with these 3 rulers. And the ism alatun is the tool for doing an action with. So in this case is the tool for creating. So it's mikhlaqun, miklaqun and miklaqatun. Just like before it was mif'alun, mif'alun and mif'alatun. So it's the same template. And so if once you memorize the characteristics and how each word changes when it goes to the next part of the table, then you can apply, once you memorize those changes, then you can apply that to any 3 rulers. So moving on to subfamily number 2. So this is recognized by the pattern fa'ala yaf'ilu. So you notice on the past tense matches the subfamily 1, they're both fa'ala. but in subfamily 1 is yaf'ulu, so the second and third root letter got dhamma, but in this case it's yaf'ilu, so the second root letter ain has a kasra, and the last letter, the third root letter, has a dhamma. So for memorization purposes we're going to use fa, ain and lam. So the past tense is fa'ala, so all of them have a fatha across them. The present tense is yaf'ilu, so you can see the second root letter has a kasra, and as per usual the last letter, the third root letter, will have a dhamma. The masdar, like I said, it's you got to look it up in the dictionary and it's unique for every word. And the ism fa'il, which is the dua, is fa'ilun, which is a normal, it starts with a fatha kasra sequence. The past tense again, it's fu'ila. The present tense, the passive past tense is fu'ila, and the passive present tense is yuf'alu. So you notice that all the harakat are at the top. The ism maf'ul is maf'ulun, and it follows the pattern maf'ulun. The command form in this case is if'il. That's because instead of taking, in the first case it was the alif is you add a dhamma to it because the second to last letter in the huwa version has, in the present tense, has a dhamma, so that's why the alif takes a dhamma. But in this case the second to last letter, the ain, in the present tense has got a kasra, so the alif you add, it takes a kasra, so it becomes if'il. And the forbidding form is la taf'il. The zarf is the place the time of the action. Like I said, it follows there's three forms. It follows maf'alun, maf'ilun, maf'alatun, just like the previous template. And the ismi alatun, the tool for doing the action with, same as the previous template, mif'alun, mif'alun, and mif'alatun. So some of the characteristics which I did mention, that the fa'ala, the past tense has fatha all across it, the present tense has the kasra on the second root letter, and we explained before the fa'ilun, the ism fa'il, has that fatha kasra sequence, fa'ilun, and the ism maf'ul, the second root letter, in the ism maf'ul, the second root letter, the ain, takes a dhamma and is followed by a wa with a sukoon. And the ism maf'ul also, which is highlighted in black, the meme takes a fatha. And the ism alatun, which is highlighted in purple, the meme takes a kasra. So an example, a real example using subfamily 2 is the gha, lam and ghain, the lam and the ba. So the part which means to dominate. So if we put these three root letters into subfamily 2, then into that template, then the past tense is galaba, which means he dominated or it dominated, and the present tense fi'l is yaglibu. So if you remember before, it was yaf'ilu, so it's yaglibu, he is dominating. And the masdar in this case, if you look it up, is galaban, which is domination. So like I said, the masdar often ends with ion or ing, or you can even say to dominate as well. The ism fa'il, which is the dua, follows a fa'ilun pattern, so it's galibun, the one who is dominating. And the passive past tense, if you remember, it was fu'ila before, so it's guliba now. He was dominated, because in passive the dua is not known. Passive present tense, before it was yuf'alu, now it's yuglabu. Again, all the harakata at the top. He is being dominated, and the masdar again, galabun. And the ism maf'ul, if you remember, is maf'ulun, and he is maglubun. So the second, the meme takes a fatha, and the second root letter has a sukoon on it, maglubun, the one who's being dominated. And then the commanding form, if you remember, it was if'il, so we just replace the fa, the ain and the lam, it becomes iglib, so you male dominate. Remember, the commanding and the forbidding form in this chart, in these charts, always refers to anta, which means you, masculine. So you'd have to choose from there which one you want. So anta would be iglib, antuma would be igliba, and antum would be iglibu, and so on and so forth. So forbidding form is la taglib, before is la taf'il. And the zarf, the place, the time of the action, is follows the patterns we mentioned before, maglabun, maglibun and maglabatun. So this is the time and place of domination. And the ismi alatun is the tool for dominating is miglabun, miglabun, and miglabatun. So again, if you remember, if you memorize this template, and the real changes to memorize are the past and the present tense. So in the first subfamily one was fa'ala yafulu, and then the rest of the other, like the masdar, the ism fa'il, the passive, the rest of them, they follow a set template. But whereas it's the past tense and the present tense that actually changes in each case, in each of the families. So the first one was fa'ala yafulu, and this one is fa'ala yaf'ilu. We move on to subfamily 3. So this is characterized, or the pattern is fa'ala yaf'alu. So you notice the only differences compared to the previous two. So the first was fa'ala yaf'ulu. So they both, the second and third root letter had dhamma. And then it was fa'ala yaf'ilu. So the second root letter had a kasra. And in this case, the second root letter ayn has a fatha. So fa'ala yaf'alu. And in all cases, fa'ala is still fa'ala. So all of them have a fatha across the past tense. So if we use the fa and the ain and the lam, so again the past tense is fa'ala, you notice it has a fatha on all three letters. The present tense is yaf'alu, so it's blue highlighted, you can see that the ain has a fatha in this case. And masdar, again we've got to look it up. Isme fa'il is again fa'ilun, like it is for the others. The passive past tense, same as the others, fu'ila. The passive present tense, yuf'alu. The ism maf'ul, just like the previous, is maf'ulun. And the command form in this case is if'al. The reason why is because the extra alif that we add takes a kasra, because the second to last letter in the huwa version, which is yaf'alu, the ain, has a fatha on it. So therefore the alif takes the alif that you add takes a kasra. So if that second to last letter has a fatha or a kasra, then the alif that you add in the commanding form takes a kasra. But if that second to last letter had a dhamma on it, then when you add an alif, that alif will have a dhamma. That's why it's if'al, and the forbidding form is la taf'al. And the zarf, the place, the time of action is maf'alun, maf'ilun, and maf'alatun, as previously, and ismi alatun, same as before, mif'alun, mif'alun, mif'alatun. And if you do need to review how to make the commanding form, I did go through it for the first one, for the first subfamily in detail, but you can always skip to that relevant chapter which discusses commanding forms and forbidding forms if you need to refresh your memory on that. And the characteristics which I discussed as we went along. The example of subfamily 3, so you use an actual word, so you use the ba, the ain, and the tha, which is ba'atha, which means to dispatch. So the past tense will be ba'atha, if you remember before was fa'ala. So we just substituted the root letters. And the present tense would be yab'athu. So if you remember before was yaf'ala. So the second root letter had a fatha. So in this case it does as well, yab'athu, because it follows the same template. Yab'athu, which means he is sending. And the masdar, if you look it up, is ba'than, which means sending. The ism fa'il is fa'ilun, so it's ba'ithun, the one who is sending. And then the passive past tense was fu'ila, so it's bu'itha, he was sent. The passive present tense was before in the the template version, yuf'alu, so it's yub'athu, he is being sent. The masdar again is ba'than, and the ism maf'ul, the thing that is acted on, before is maf'ulun, so it's mab'uthun, the one who's being sent. And then the commanding form, if you remember, was if'al, so it's ib'ath, you may send. Forbidding form is la tab'ath, before it was la taf'al, so la tab'ath, you may don't send. And the zarf, the place time of action is mab'athun, mab'ithun, mab'athatun, so the same pattern as in the previous template, time and place of sending. And the ismi alatun is the tool for sending, so mib'athun, mib'athun, and mib'athatun. And subfamily 4, this is where you start noticing the difference in the past tense. So before, in all three, subfamily 1, 2 and 3, the past tense was fa'ala. The only thing that changed was the present tense. So it was always fa'ala in the past tense, and then the present tense was slightly different. It either had the dhamma, a fatha, or the kasra on the second root letter. But now you start seeing changes in the past tense as well. So this time it's fa'ila yaf'alu. So in the past tense we see that change because in the second root letter we see a kasra now, and the second root letter in the present tense has a fatha. So fa'ila yaf'alu. So if you go through the chart, so it's fa'ila, which is highlighted yellow, the A in the second root letter, it has a kasra. The present tense is yaf'alu, again the second root letter is highlighted, it has a fatha, so you have to remember that. And then everything else is as per usual, so the ism fa'il is fa'ilun, the passive past is fu'ila, passive present tense is yufalu, all the harakat at the top. The mustard, like I said, you got to look it up. Ism maf'ul, the thing acted on is maf'ulun. The commanding form, because the second to last letter in the huwa version, the yaf'alu, has a fatha, then automatically we know that when we add the extra alif, it's going to take a kasra. So it's if'al. And just as a reminder that when we remove, because yaf'alu, when we want to make it into a command, we take the anta version, you, masculine you, so it becomes tafalu, then we drop the ta. Or you can, the first process, you can make it into the lightest version first, so the dhamma at the end becomes a sukoon, becomes taf'al, then you drop the ta, and you only add an alif if the new first letter, which in this case is the fa, if it has a harakat other than sukoon, then you don't need to add the alif. So if that fa had a dhamma, had a fatha or a kasra, then you don't need to add an alif. We only add the alif when that new first letter, after dropping the ta, after removing the ta, which in this case is the fa, when it has a sukoon on it, then you add the alif. Because otherwise you can't pronounce it, because the word starts with a sukoon if you don't add the alif. So it's if'al. And the forbidding form is la taf'al. The zarf is, the three zarf, maf'alun, maf'ilun, maf'alatun, as per usual for these templates. And ismi'alatun, the tool for doing the action, mif'alun, mif'alun, mif'alatun, just like before. And I discussed the characteristics as we went along, but again here's written in detail. So we'll use an example of subfamily 4 using the ha, the fa, and the zuain, which means to guard. So the same we put into that template of subfamily 4. So past tense is hafiza, which, if you remember before, was fa'ila, so it means he guarded. And present tense fi'il will be ya'fazu, which is he is guarding. So before it was yaf'alu. Mustard is hifsan, something we have to look up. Ism fa'il follows the fa'ilun, so it's hafizun. And passive past tense fu'ila, now it's hufiza. And the passive present tense, before it was yufalu, so it's yufazu. And the mustard is hifsan again, and ism maf'ul followed the pattern. The thing that's acted on was maf'ulun, so it's maf'uzun, the one who's being guarded. So the commanding form, if you remember, it was if'al, so it's ifaz. And forbidding form, it was la taf'al, so it's la ta'faz. And the zarf is same template as before, ma'fuzun, ma'fizun, ma'fazatun. And the ismi'alatun, the tool for doing the action with, is mitfazun, mitfazun, and mitfazatun. So moving on to subfamily 5. The makeup is fa'ila yaf'ilu. So you notice that the second root letter, the ain, has a kasra. And if you look at the present tense, yaf'ilu, again the second root letter has a kasra. So if we're looking at the chart, the past tense is fa'ila, so if second root letter, highlighted yellow, has a kasra. And the present tense is yaf'ilu, again the second root letter, the ain, has a kasra in the present tense as well. And the rest is as per usual, so the mustard, obviously depending on the word you look it up. Ism fa'il follows fa'ilun, passive past tense fu'ila, passive present tense yufalu, all the harakat at the top. Ism maf'ul is maf'ulun, and the commanding form is if'il, because if you look at the present tense, the second to last letter in the huwa version, yaf'ilu, has a kasra, so therefore the alif will take the alif that we add to it in the commanding form will be kasra, so it's if'il. The forbidding form will be la taf'il, and the zarf as per usual, maf'alun, maf'ilun, maf'alatun, and the ismi'alatun, mif'alun, mif'alun, and mif'alatun. And the example of subfamily 5, we use the ha, the sin, and the ba, which to assume it means. So the past tense will be hasiba, before it was fa'ila, and the present tense, remember, it was yafilu, so it's yasibu. The past means he assumed, the present tense he is assuming, and the masdar, if you look this up, is hisaban. The ism fa'il is hasibun, it follows fa'ilun pattern, and the passive past tense was fu'ila, so it's husiba, it was assumed. The passive present tense was yufalu, so it's yusabu. The masdar again is hisaban, and ism maf'ul, the thing that's acted on, was maf'ulun. This is ma'subun, the thing that is being assumed. And the commanding form before was if'il, so it's i'sib, you male assume. And the forbidding form is la ta'sib, which means you, the male, the anta version, don't assume, before was la tafil. And the zarf is ma'sabun, ma'sibun, ma'sabatun, so that's the time and place of assuming. And the ismi alatun is the tool for assuming, will be mi'sabun, mi'sabun, mi'sabatun. So subfamily 6, so again we can notice the changes by looking at the past and present tense. So the past is fa'ula and the present is yafulu. So this is the fa'ula, yafulu family. So the past tense is fa'ula, the second haraka takes a dhamma, and the present tense is yaf'ulu, again the second root letter takes a dhamma. The masdar, got to look up, and then ismi fa'il is slightly different compared to the others. Normally it's fa'ilun, but here you'll see it's fa'ilun. So the ya with the sakoon is added to this subfamily 6, which is the last subfamily. So the ismi fa'il is slightly different compared to the other subfamily. Normally it follows fa'ilun, but here it's fa'ilun. So the ya with the sakoon is connected to the second root letter. And the other thing that we notice about the subfamily 6, that it is a lazim fi'il, so meaning it doesn't have a maf'ul bihi, it doesn't take a maf'ul bihi. And a lazim fi'il also means that there's no passive version. If you remember when we were talking about transitive and intransitive verbs, so the rest are muta'addi, so subfamily 1 to 5, so they can have passive versions. It does depend on the 3 root letters that are used, but generally speaking they do. But in particularly in subfamily 6, it's fully lazim, so meaning they don't have a passive version. That's why it's not applicable, the whole passive line, including the ism maf'ul as well, because the ism maf'ul is part of the passive. And the commanding form, so if you notice the huwa version is yaf'ulu, so the second to last letter has a dhamma, so therefore when we add the extra alif we'll add the dhamma, so it's uf'ul. And the forbidding form is la taf'ul, and the zarf is as per usual maf'alun, maf'ilun, maf'alatun, and the ismi alatun as per usual mif'alun, mif'alun, and mif'alatun. So the only difference here was the ismi fa'il, which is highlighted in green, that a ya with a sakoon is attached to the second root letter ain, so it's fa'ilun. And an example for subfamily 6 would be the dad, the ain, and the fa, which is to be weak. And this is a lazim family. You'll realize it by the meaning. If you look at the translation of the meaning, then you'll realize that it's actually it doesn't it's a lazim family, meaning it doesn't have a passive version. Because if you look at the past tense, it's da'ufa. If you remember, it was fa'ula before. This means he was weak. So in English, he actually sounds passive already. He was weak. And the present tense before it was yaf'ulu. Now it's yad'ufu. So he is weak. And the masdar is du'fan. If you look it up, it is weakness. And the ism fa'il, if you remember, was fa'ilun. The ya with the sukoon is there, so this will be da'ifun, so the one who is weak. And also, if you actually look at the past and the present tense meaning, he was weak, you can't make that passive, because the word was is usually used to make something passive, to make an active passive, and the word already was is there, so that's why you can't make it passive even if you tried. So the forbidding before it was uf'ul, so it's ud'uf, so you male, be weak. So remember these commanding and forbidding forms is for anta, you masculine. So the forbidding form is la tad'uf, which means you male, don't be weak. And the zarf as per usual, mad'afun, mad'ifun, mad'afatun. So it follows the usual pattern, time and place of becoming weak. And the ismi alatun, tool for becoming weak, mid'afun, mid'afun, and mid'afatun. So if we discuss determining the subfamily, so unless both the past tense form and the present tense form of the fi'l are shown, the subfamily cannot be determined without looking the fi'l up in a dictionary. And this is explained in the dictionary chapter, because the dictionary, an Arabic dictionary, will teach you, will show you that what family does it belong to. So if you just had the present tense, you can figure out what through the Arabic dictionary what family it belongs to, or if you just had the past tense, you can figure it out as well by looking up the 3 root letters. And this is something we discussed in the dictionary chapter, because you'll notice the reason why you need both the past tense and the present tense to recognize the family is because there's more than one family that has, for example, the first 3 families in the past tense, they all fa'ala. So if you just had the 3 root letters with fatah on all 3 of them, then you don't know if it's subfamily 1, 2 or 3, because they all start with fa'ala. And then there's another one that there's 2 families that, for example, subfamily 1 and subfamily 6, that the present tense is yaf'ulu. So in both cases is yaf'ulu. So if you saw that, you actually don't know if it's subfamily 1 or subfamily 6, and that's the same for all of them. So it's you can't determine it either unless you have both the past and present in front of you, or if you look it up in the dictionary. So, but some subfamilies are more common. So if you had to take a logical guess, this is the process you should follow. So between hasiba and hafiza, so if you remember, that's we're talking about past tense. So if you had fa'ila, hasiba becomes hasiba ya'sabu, if you remember, which is fa'ila yaf'alu, and the hafiza is hasiba is hasiba ya'sibu, right, which is shown just below it. So hasiba ya'sibu, so and hafiza is hafiza ya'fazu. So in hasiba, in the past and the present tense, the second root letter takes a kasra. So it's hasiba ya'sibu. So the second root letter takes a kasra. And in hafiza ya'fazu, the second root letter in the past takes a kasra. So it's hafiza. And then it becomes ya'fazu, which is right next to it in this sentence. So the second root letter takes a fatha. So if you had to choose between hasiba or hafiza family, then the hafiza ya'fazu family, subfamily 4, is more common. So you should go with that one. And so between the ya'sibu in the present tense and yaglibu family, so again the ya'sibu would be hasiba ya'sibu. So both the second root letter has a kasra, but whereas with the yaglibu, if you remember, is galaba yaglibu. So the past tense, the second root letter has a fatha, and in the present tense it has a kasra. So there's the difference between the two. But just looking at it, they look the same, don't they? Because we don't have the past tense there. So if you had to choose between which one, if you saw root letters in this form, that which one would it be, ya'sibu or yaglibu? Then go with the yaglibu family. So galaba yaglibu. So that's more common, which is subfamily 2. And between yad'ufu and yagluku, because like I said, subfamily 1 and subfamily 6, I said before that they both end with 2 dhammas. So it's fa'ala yaf'ulu, they both have yaf'ulu. But the difference is in yad'ufu, the subfamily 6, the past tense is da'ufa. So the second root letter has a dhamma, and then in the present tense is yad'ufu. So the second and third root letter both have dhamma. But in yaglugu, if you remember, it'd be khalaqa. So meaning it's fatha all the way across. So fatha on the second root letter, then you have dhamma on the second and third root letter in the present tense. So it'd be So the first one would be da'ufa yad'ufu and khalaqa yakhluqu. So if you had to choose between these two, because you don't know what the past tense is, for example, then you should go with the yakhluqu family. So khalaqa yakhluqu, the subfamily 1 is more common than the subfamily 6. So I have the 3. So the subfamily 4 is more common, subfamily 2 is more common, and the subfamily 1 tends to be more common. So the extra family parts in small subfamilies, if you remember, we did go through this before. So just if I quickly go through this, is ismu alatun, which is a tool or device for doing the action, and it follows the pattern mifalun, mifalun, mifalatun, and the ism tafdil is the comparative. It follows afalu pattern, and you just exchange the 3 root letters, the fa, the ain, and the lam, with whatever you want. And the ism sifa is an adjective for permanent qualities. So it follows fa'ilun or fa'ilun, and then the ism mubalaga and is the magnified version of the do or the ism fa'il. So it follows the fa'alun pattern, fa'lanu and fa'ulun and fi'ilun and fu'ulun. So it has 5 different versions that it can appear in the ism mubalaga. So as per usual, at the end of every chapter, we always advise to take a look at the vocabulary list chapter at the end of this book and become familiar with those words. Ideally, at the end of every session, this curriculum is studied so that your Arabic grammar knowledge grows and increases with your vocab knowledge, inshallah.